Hello, Robert Dakota here of Worldviews Media. I'm coming to you from Sedona, the other Holy Land. William Henry is over in Egypt and has agreed to connect with us to give us a little insight of what you're going to experience and take away from the workshop we're doing in December 1st, 1 through 3. And that's called Halo. Could you give us a little more feedback on that, William?
For sure. And thank you for chatting here, Robert. It's really great to build a bridge between where I'm at right now, which is at the base of the Great Pyramids at the Mina House Hotel, and Sedona. There's just some really deep, powerful connection between these two locations. And I've been told so much lately that Egypt there's something, so many people are wanting to come to Egypt right now. It's unbelievable. I mean, I've been coming here for 20 years, almost every year for 20 years, including during the lean times right after the revolution. And now it seems like everybody and their grandmother are offering tours to Egypt, and new people are starting to do this. And it's really tremendously exciting because the Egyptians have waited a long time for this. And the metaphysical people, the spiritually minded people that are coming here are being drawn here now. They're being called. There's something that's coming out of Egypt now that is very unique, very special, and it's connected with Sedona in so many ways. So it's like Sedona is the gateway. In America, it's truly the focal point for the spiritual transformation that's happening in the United States. And so it's really just awesome to be one of the bridge builders here between these two locations. So when I do the Halo event in Sedona, December 1st for the 3rd, it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for me to distill work that I've been doing for the past 2 years on my Halo events. I've done 5 now in Nashville, 5 live Halo events, beginning with my Awakening the Pearl work from 2020 all the way into 2023 now with Halo 5. And the focus of it is really about the pineal gland and all of the ancient mystery school teachings about the pineal gland, how it's awakening, how it triggers the luminosity and radiance of people, how it releases the secretions. Most notably, Christos in the Christian tradition was considered an oil. They called it Christos, which means an anointing. Christos is also the name for the Essene or Jewish mystical name for the oil of joy. And in the text where they describe the oil of joy, they talk about Yeshua or Jesus teaching his little brother James all about these principles about how to kickstart the pineal gland and awaken the potentials of the pineal gland to release this oil of joy that can cure any human disease. They call it the oil of joy because it brings healing, but also because it puts one in connection with a joy or a bliss beyond bliss that is otherworldly. And this was the key secret that Jesus transmitted to the disciples, especially James, and also, of course, notably Mary Magdalene, and all the Mira Force. This is something that I covered extensively in Halo 2 and Halo 3, as well as 4, looking into the Essene, the Jewish mystical and ancient Egyptian mysteries of these figures: Jesus, Mary Magdalene, James, the brother of Jesus, Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, the 3 Marys. These are all experts, acknowledged experts in oils, herbs, but especially plant medicine. And this is something that was a real revelation to me. I had been doing a lot of research for 20 years on the Essenes and looking into their mystery school teachings from an academic perspective. When I was living in Nashville, I've relocated to Phoenix now. When I was living in Nashville, I had access to a tremendous library, the Vanderbilt University Divinity Library, which was packed with every single text, publication, PhD dissertation that was ever done on the Essenes. There was a family called the Zimmerman family. They started a company called Service Merchandise a few decades ago, and they funded this Judaica museum that is the #1 museum in the or library in the world for Judaica studies and Essene studies. And I had access to that for a long time. And kept peeling back the layers of the mysteries of the Essenes and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they kept talking about their understanding of this oil of joy, this Christos, and how it could produce. They had prophecies about how the Archangel Michael was involved originally in the production of this mysterious substance that could dissolve the human body into light. The Essenes wrote these stories, for example, about Enoch, who in his ascension met the Archangel Michael, and Michael anointed him with this oil of joy that transformed his human body into an angelic light body. And that really got my attention. And I'm thinking, what is this oil? And is it produced on earth, or as the Dead Sea Scrolls and even the Christian mystical texts are suggesting, it comes from another realm, even another dimension? It could be something like Gary Young or Young Living Essential Oils could blend, but it's actually, the stories say, no, there's an other dimensional aspect to this. And this really captured my imagination. And I realized that it would be difficult to tell this story in a single event. So this is where I started the Halo events, because it was very clear in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the early Christian mystical texts that they had full awareness of the secrets of the skull and what goes on between our ears and the mystical secretions of the pineal gland and how to kickstart it and to release these hormones all the way up to dimethyltryptamine or DMT that opens portals or gateways in our consciousness so we can connect with these otherworldly beings. So I knew as I was developing the Halo series that ultimately it was going to be able to get distilled into a really powerful weekend experience. And that's what I'm going to be doing December 1st through the 3rd, beginning Friday night and into Saturday and Sunday, is pulling the vital threads of this research together into one weekend that includes all the historical data, mind-blowing sacred art that reveals how the Halo is kickstarted, along with meditations for activating the pineal gland. I've had so many participants that have done, for example, the Joe Dispenza workshops, who are like, wait a minute, this is what Joe is doing. And I'm like, yeah, and this is the Essene origins of this work, because we go very deep into the New Testament as a coded manual, for an instruction manual for kickstarting our inner awareness in the neurosecretory system that releases these secretions. And I take it even further by going back into the ancient Egyptian tradition, which is one reason I'm so excited to be here now in anticipation of this December event, to fine-tune some of my research, gather some more pictures, and reveal that this teaching is the true cosmic teaching that is ultimately woven through all the world's religious and spiritual traditions. They all ultimately want to take us into the skull and help us to recognize the potential, the power within our pineal gland to, again, release these hormones and these secretions that can heal the body and ultimately transfigure the body into its next higher form.
Wow, so many things you said there, William. I studied theology, and we came through from the Old Testament to the New Testament, but they don't bring you to this information. No. They kind of gloss over it, put it in the background. There are all these other things that you have to do that seem to be part of what you need to do, but you don't seem to get the full package.
No, you really don't. And as a mythologist, as one who specializes in ancient myths and sacred traditions, I know there are 7 levels of interpretation for ancient sacred texts. You have the literal, the historical, the metaphorical, the allegorical, you have the astronomical, you have the anatomical, and you have the anagogical, which refers to your ascension. So back in 1999, I had written a book called God Making, which introduced me to this idea of our mystic anatomy, and that how many of these ancient sacred stories like Jacob's ladder and Jacob wrestling with the angel at Peniel are actually references, coded references to what goes on inside our body. So this is a subject that I've been investigating and been familiar with for a couple of decades. And then what was it, maybe 5 years ago, Again, Dr. Joe especially comes along and starts narrowing specifically in on the pineal gland, and not to detract in any way, but he opened it up to the masses by connecting it deeply with science, which is great. But what I always saw and wanted to more fully develop was its original mystical origins within Christianity, Judaism, the ancient Egyptian religion. And so that's what I'll be putting together in this package for everyone that weekend, is the science that we now know about this, as well as the ancient steps, if you will, that in my view are so necessary and important because they form sort of a stairway for us to ascend ourselves. As we go back into the origins of this teaching, it provides a stair step for us and a way for us to connect with this teaching, this information on different levels, be it the Egyptian, the Jewish, the Christian, the Tibetan tradition. We cover it all in the Halo work, and we'll be doing so with the Halo Masterclass, which I call Christos.
Do you think this is part of the reason why so many people are attracted to or are migrating toward Egypt or other sacred places, is because the height of our spiritual existence here is seeming to be that we have to raise above where we are if we're going to continue on?
Truly. And as many might realize or recognize, for the past 20 years, in conjunction with all my other mythological work on stargates and wormholes and the ancient aliens career that I've had for the past 13 years, I've also concurrently spoken out against AI and transhumanism. And it's becoming very apparent, as I called it 5, 7, 10 years ago, that there's a parallel path here, and that we're going to have to recognize that AI is here to challenge us. It's here to make us better, ultimately, because we're having to push back against it. And the way we push back against it is by remaining organic and triggering the natural capabilities within us and expanding those abilities. And that, in part, I think, is a deep call that people are recognizing. All of us are sensing there's some weirdness in our world right now. Strange things are happening, prophetic things are happening. And during these strange and prophetic times, this is where we really have to go within and recognize, the pandemic made it very, very clear that we had to go within, and that what we were seeing out here was not necessarily the truth, and that we have to have additional tools in our kit in order to transcend and even prosper during these times. And this is the point, is not to view this, what's occurring with AI and transhumanism in sort of a antagonistic way, but rather as like, the entwined serpents, if you will, of the caduceus, that to utilize that energy to recognize, hey, we've got to really start to up our game. And that, I think, is in part what people are answering to. And also the planet itself, we've always been told, at least in these spiritual circles, and I know you've done this work a long time, that Gaia herself was going to be rising and ascending. And what that means is that these power spots are going to become more active. And whether you listen to Greg Braden or Dr. J.J. Hurtak, they'll explain this geologically, that, volcanoes all around the world are suddenly becoming active, even underwater volcanoes, and this is pushing energy up to the surface. It's really coming from the sun, which the Mayans spoke of, as you will well recall, back in 2012. They said, oh yeah, our alignment with the sun and the Milky Way galaxy is going to cause a major transformation. And everybody thought it was going to be on one specific day. But then we all knew that wasn't so. It's actually a window was opening, a new era, a new chapter was opening. And this is what we're feeling. We're 10 years on now, 11 years on from that transformational moment that the Mayans had prophesied, saying that an energy was coming from the center of our galaxy, through our sun, through the core of our Earth, and it's rising up. And so again, Greg, the Hurtaks, I just heard them both speak recently about this very subject, about what's going on geologically and how that is pushing energy up into these sacred spots. It's got to come up and out. And so as the Earth is rising, we're rising too. And now we've got to recognize that we have the perfect tool to assist us in that rising, And this is it. It's our body itself. And this is in part why I see millions, hundreds of millions of people practicing yoga, doing meditation, engaging in spiritual practices, including, and especially now, plant medicine all over the world. The plants are teaching us. And this is a major part of my presentation with Halo, is helping people to see and more fully understand the role of sacred plants and plant medicine in our ascension and our transfiguration.
Yeah, again, it seems like all of that is supposed to be combined together somehow.
Yeah.
And when it's broken apart and you got that syndrome where the Indian sages are all looking at an elephant, given different descriptions of different parts of the elephant, if you don't bring it together,
Right.
you can get little bits and pieces, and everyone can, get entrenched in, well, it's this or it's this,
Right.
instead of a combination of all things. Could you talk about a little bit about ascension for someone who might not be familiar with that word, and what it really signifies and what it's for our experience?
Sure. Yeah. Ascension really is the oldest religious and spiritual tradition on the planet. When you research traditional religions, you find that there's a parallel mystery school tradition that runs right alongside what you would consider the orthodox or the traditional view. And that is the ascension path. And this is the idea that while in your body, while living, you can attain a greater sense of wholeness, holiness, and completion. And indeed, become more divine, awaken the divine within. That is what ascension is about. It's not necessarily waiting, as the traditional religious systems teach. Ascension is something that happens when you're dead, okay, after you die. No, the parallel tradition says you do it while you're alive. It's a process. It's a stair-stepping process. And it's not that you're suddenly going to spontaneously disappear or transform into light, although that is possible. They call that rapture in Christianity. It's actually more of a scaling. That's a musical term. You scale a ladder, and there's also musical scales. It's all about raising your vibration and ascending this higher into this higher vibration. And this is something that a lot of people talk about raising my vibration and higher frequency. And very often what I've observed is that, especially around the spiritual circles, they think that ascension's like a new idea, that it just started 5 years ago. It's the most ancient idea. The oldest human stories, creation stories, tell us that our body was in fact created or fashioned, if you will, tweaked, augmented to make it a more conducive vehicle for the ascension of the soul. And every religious and spiritual tradition speaks of the body as this vehicle, but none of them really teach us how to utilize this vehicle. And that's what this Halo work is dedicated to, is to connect the dots with your body and show how the work that you're doing, especially as I mentioned a moment ago, in the areas of meditation, spiritual or sacred travel, yoga, utilizing plant medicines, that is all part of the ascension process. You are ascending as you are doing those things, because you're transforming your consciousness, and you're ultimately healing and transforming your body, which is what it's ultimately all about.
Well, every time we get in a conversation, my head starts coming up with lots of, oh yeah, and oh yeah. I'll just bring up one because I know you're short on time and you're on tour there in Egypt, but
Sure.
we were listening to a sensei in Japan, and he was talking about the plant kingdom actually being like one level above humanity as far as knowledge and wisdom was concerned. And I found that hard to swallow because, first of all, how can you prove that? How do you know?
Right.
And second, if that were so, wouldn't they be creating a civilization or, in competition with us in some way? But I have to acknowledge that there are so many plant teachers, plant medicines from around the world. Why would they be called plant teachers? Why would they be referred to as medicines if they weren't bringing us access to something we didn't have access to ourselves?
Right.
Necessarily without some coaching or guidance. And it seems like I would much rather be ascending and getting high instead of descending and going low.
Right.
So it's a vibrant, it's a vibration and it's a frequency.
Yeah, I mean, it's on right now and it's happening, Robert. And I know you're involved in it. You've been an active advocate and proponent of this transformation. Again, we referenced 2012 in relation to plant medicine. I remember back in 2012, you might have heard, oh, they went down to Peru and they did ayahuasca with a shaman. And you're like, oh, wow, what's that? And Graham Hancock, of course, did a lot of work in this area. And now there's over 1,000 ayahuasqueros in America, over 1,000. So that means on any given weekend, there's probably, if each one is working with, say, 6 to 10 people, there's 100,000 people or more every weekend connecting with these higher realms and having these transformational experiences. And this is just the beginning, a tsunami of just higher dimensional experience and compassion and love, because all of this is geared towards opening the heart as well as the mind, is rising on the planet right now. And this is all, again, concurrent with what is happening with Ascension. It's concurrent with even the transformation of the planet itself, and especially what we're seeing around the area of AI and transhumanism. It's tremendously exciting. And if anyone is out there thinking things look like, wow, they could tip and maybe go bleak, we're at a real breakthrough point here. And it's time for us to really put all the pieces together. And what I've been noticing is that I talk with a lot of people that, as I've mentioned, into the yoga and the meditation, and they're traveling and plant medicine, and it's like they've got a six-pack, and they've tried this, and they've tried that, And my role is more and more to provide the plastic thingy that holds all those experiences together, and said it's all part of this bundle of ascension and activating your halo and living from like a more angelic existence. I've said since 2013 that the antidote for artificial intelligence is to raise our ascension intelligence, or our angelic intelligence. We've got to become and be able to think and act and be more like the angelic ones who have transcended all of this. That what this will do is release new ideas and inspirations that we can't even think of at our present level of consciousness. But as we all begin to engage in this halo work and the ascension work, suddenly this is where the new ideas and inspirations come from. And 100th monkey effect kicks in, and next thing you know, we've really done something transformative here. And that's what all this is aimed at.
I like that comment about the 100th monkey effect, William, because it's so important.
Yeah, and to kind of toot my own horn, if you will, for some reason, I've been way ahead of the curve on several different movements. The Stargate Egypt connection, for one, like, I was just reading the other day, some guides were talking about how the source text for Plato's story of Atlantis came from the Temple of Horus at Edfu. And I'm the one that pointed that out. And now it's standard knowledge. Okay.
Yeah.
It was way ahead of the game with AI and transhumanism. Now it's readily apparent. And there are other things. And that's goes to, well, why would someone want to come to a weekend in Sedona and listen to me go on about Halo and this work, or participate on the live stream? And it's because I have just had this ability, I guess because of the extensive research that I do, or maybe intuition or whatever, to be a little ahead of the curve. And I'm very excited about that. And it's a matter of service for me. And so that's what you'll be getting, is not only my fundamental kind of stuff, knowledge, research, ideas that have been built into Halo, but also you'll be recognizing you'll be really ahead of the curve in terms of what's coming up as well, which is very beneficial in these times. And because everybody wants to know, what can I do, or what do I need to be doing? And I'm going to put all that together in this Christos presentation, and I'm really looking forward to it and grateful to you for organizing this and making this happen. So, we have an opportunity right now, and again, it's I'm very grateful for the chance to put all this together. It's decades of research. It's 2 years of concurrent Halo events that'll be distilled into one weekend, a master class that will just take you right straight to the core of it and give you in one weekend in a package a very powerful tool that you can put in your kit. So I'm really looking forward to it.
We are too, William. Thank you so much for your time. We know you got to get back to your tour in Egypt. It's really cool and awesome to be speaking to you, from Egypt to Sedona. And looking forward to having you here in person. And thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Robert. And I look forward to seeing everybody December 1st through 3rd, whether in person or online.
Great. Thank you so much, William.
Pleasure.
See you soon.
Thank you.